but I really committed to this idea that I like this story. I've seen it out. I've seen what I want it to be, and I want to finish it off.
Yeah.
And it's something in my mind that I really enjoy, and I feel like if I enjoyed, someone else might enjoy it. And if I can get one or two more people to enjoy it, that's the goal. Like, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not doing it to become famous or anything like that. I really just like writing.
Like a little opera vibe. R&B Podcast, episode 44. R&B Podcast, you listen so you can get some more. All right, that's cool.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Welcome back to R&B Podcast with Russ, with Blake. We want to thank God for this opportunity. We have another very, very, very special guest.
What it do, baby?
Yeah, what it do?
Shout out to Kawhi.
Yeah.
Omar Soussi. We go back, man. We go back into the high school days.
Decade and a half at this point. Almost a decade and a half.
I guess so.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I guess so. Yeah, we're going to have our 10-year... and what is it?
Anniversary,
Yeah.
10-year reunion.
Reunion. That's the word I was looking for. Next year, coming up quick. But football, track, academics. We've been kind of alongside each other, walking different paths.
Definitely.
And recently, you have added another label to your professionalism as an author. Azul,
Yeah.
and I picked up a copy yesterday, so I'm excited to read it. I haven't read it yet. I haven't read a fiction book in many years. I can't tell you the last time I read a fiction novel, and it's not something that I really thought about.
Yeah.
Right?
I can tell you right now, not including this, I haven't read into. I tried to read Dune over summer, and I got like 200 pages in, and it got to July, and I was like, I don't have time. So
Yeah.
no, I completely am the same page. I have not been reading either. I've just been typing.
Well, yeah, because you have to put in a lot of time into the writing process.
Definitely.
How many years did it take you to write this book?
It took me about 6 years. It took me, my junior year of college is when I started working on the book, and I finished in May with everything published, all set up.
That's super cool. And self-published.
Wow.
Self-published, yeah.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, so what do you think inspired you to start writing this specific story?
So there's a lot of things that inspired me with the book. The first thing was I was watching Game of Thrones while I think it was Game of Thrones. I started watching it when I was a sophomore, the end of my sophomore year. And as I was watching it, I was also still working as a journalist. So I started working as a journalist. I went to Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. My entire goal at that time, the only thing I really was focused on was becoming a journalist. Everything else, I was getting a history degree while I was at it. But the main focus, I think you guys remember, I was talking up, I'll be on ESPN. I'll be covering football, basketball, whatever. I spent my sophomore year working for the local newspaper at ASU State Press, and end of sophomore year, I'm interviewing again for the position because we have a new sports editor and sports editor-in-chief. So I'm interviewing for that, and they don't bring me back on. I've never actually asked them what was the reason why they never brought me back on. I was kind of more tilted that I didn't get back after what I thought was some great reporting on golf and track, and also going out of my way to cover men's bowling and getting into a bit of a shouting match with the coach there, which it's
the bowling coach.
The bowling
That
coach, yeah, no, he did not like my story. I can't remember the exact quote, but he said basically this story is terrible. We want someone else to write it.
Wow.
It was a first draft. It wasn't even the final copy. He wanted to see it that quickly. I was just like, hey, this is what I got right now. Soussi, this is terrible. Okay, well, this isn't the final copy yet, so just be patient. It'll be better.
Yeah.
Communication.
Communication's
key.
And were they just winning like every match?
They won the state title. I think they won a title. I can't remember if it was state or national.
Okay.
I think it was honestly national that they won. They were really good.
Okay,
so it's not like they were just scrubs. You were just giving them 5 seconds
He had a
and he
little
was
chip
freaking
on
out.
his shoulder. At that
Exactly.
time,
And it's not like your article was talking about what they needed to do better. You were probably just big upping them and
Exactly,
saying that they were doing great. So
Exactly.
yeah.
I get why it wasn't my best work, and I get why he would be that way. It's just like, it's a rough draft. We're starting the process off, but he was just like he wanted it his way. He didn't want it state press way. He wanted kind of a bit of propaganda,
Sure.
make the team and everyone look better. So I get that, but I didn't get back onto state press. So my junior year, I was kind of sitting there without really something to do. I was going to classes. I didn't really have anything extracurricular going on. So I was talking to a friend and we were kind of just, I can't remember exactly what it was that got me going into the book, but I remember just really liking Game of Thrones and really wanting something to do and really wanting to just write. I didn't want to do anything else at that point. I just wanted to do something. And by the end of my junior year, I think, I was talking to my older brother, Ahmed, and I was talking to him about, I may want to just write something, write a book, write a story. And he was just like, you may want to take some classes. You don't really, he knew I was already doing journalism. He knew I was doing a lot of writing, but he was like, but he was like, you don't really, writing stories and writing reports and
two different things.
Yeah. And at that point I was like, well, I think I could do this. I think there's not too much of a transition. And he was like, Omar, you literally, how are you going to write a battle scene? How are you going to do this? And I was just like, okay, hold up. Let me do this. Let me show you that I can do this. And let's get going on that path. So the first, anything that I wrote about Azul was something that's not even in the book. It's completely like prequel stuff that I've kind of cut. But it was just like the first domino to fall to lead to what Azul is today. And it kind of changed over the years. But for the most part, the core identity of Azul and what the story is hasn't really changed. Everything around it has, where it is, who's in it, the main ending, 2 books down the line. But Azul, her story, her journey kind of stayed the same. I feel like I've kind of just gone
that was great.
all over the place with that.
That was more information I was expecting, but you filled in a lot of very important blanks
100%.
there. And I feel like that's a really unique inspiration to want to write a book, and then especially to actually see out the whole process over several years and get the physical copy and start the production on your own. All of that is so many more elements added into just having the idea of writing a book.
Definitely. No, it was a lot more work than I was prepared for 6 years ago. And when I started, like the first thing was just like, I'll get the book done. And once it's done, I'm sure I'll find someone to publish it. I'll get all this done. And even if I can't find anyone to publish, I'll get something done. I'll do it on my own. And as we get close, I think it was the end of my senior year, we start finishing the prequel. And at that point, or finishing what was going to be the prequel, I kind of at that point decided, you know what, this story does not work. I'm not really feeling it. I'm going to change it up. I'm not going to do a prequel. We're just going to start with the original story. And what's funny is like the prequel is about like 40,000 words. And at this point, it's a good base for what this is, but it's not really connected to the story anymore because I've changed so much. So it's like 40,000 words theoretically in the trash, but realistically, it was a good base for what the story is because like so much of it, that prequel bleeds into what the main story is because like it has everything that I really wanted, but by the time I hit 40,000 words, I kind of recognized it was going to be about the Aztecs and the Spanish. And while I was writing it, I kind of recognized the stuff I was writing about the Aztecs. I didn't really have the full capability and understanding of Aztec culture.
The full background.
It kind of felt like I was just picking and choosing what I wanted, and it didn't feel authentic to me. And I kind of felt like I don't really want to take this culture, take what I'm doing here, and just throw it on here just as a background and not really give it the respect it deserves. So I kind of decided we're going to shift it off and change the prequel stuff and everything happening into something else, which does get hit on in book 2 and 3. Book 1 doesn't really touch on it. It really is just Azul's perspective, and Azul really doesn't know any of that stuff. So it's kind of just her view. And then as the world progressively gets more and more open and we get more and more characters, you learn more about what is in this background. So it's a lot, and it's kind of a lot that I kind of have to think of as I'm writing. I'm literally there's no day other than like the last couple of weeks when I've been drowning in work. There's really no time that I'm not thinking about the book. Mm-hmm. And I'm not thinking about what I want to do, how I want to get to the ending, how I want to make these characters work, how do I want to get to this scene and stuff like that. Like, I am constantly putting thought into it. Even when I'm teaching and the kids are getting obnoxious or they're taking notes, I'm kind of thinking in the background, like, Azul. How can I make this happen?
Yeah.
What can I have Azul do to get to this point?
That's what's up.
Did you have some type of program for how long you would write, like per day or per week, or is there some type of system you had with that?
I tried to hit 1,000 words every day.
Okay.
Nice.
Especially when I was in school, like when I was during summer school, or just summer, or during times where I didn't really have that much work. 1,000 words were my bare minimum. I remember staying up till 4 a.m. sometimes just writing, and I would just be staring at my computer just trying to think of something to put down. Mm-hmm. But even though some of that stuff ultimately gets cut at the end, I love it because I need something on the page. I want something written down to help me get to that next part.
For sure.
It especially helps me because when I'm putting it down on that paper and I'm seeing it out there, I can kind of like keep building on to that and kind of see where I can get from there.
Yeah, it seems like a very self-fulfilling process for you. You've fallen in love with the process, which I think is always important, especially if you're going to stick to something for that long. And you keep talking about book 2 and 3, if you notice, and I think that's awesome too.
I know I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like,
please interrupt me.
I know how I want the story to end. I know like book 2, I've written about 35,000 words, and I've already written the last 3 chapters. So I'm just getting to that point. Like I love it, and I really love just getting into it. And the kids, when I started working as a teacher, they didn't know about it till May, and like they started being like, "Mr. Soussi, you're a writer. You wrote this book. Oh my God, Can you sign this copy?" Like they are so invested into it.
And you're like a little celebrity now.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, it's not just because I teach history. It's because like they actually like the book, or they just like my class, and that subconsciously bleeds into the book.
Yeah.
So was there any influence of that original Aztec Spanish conflict in the book Azul?
Oh yeah. Okay. Azul, the name kind of gives it away. She is Spanish, and you kind of learn throughout the book her mom is from southern Spain. Her dad, you kind of will learn more about throughout the story, but the conflict starts, it's in the Renaissance, like right when the Renaissance should be, so 1500s. And for Azul, you don't really see that. You don't get to see this whole rebirth of society and culture. It starts off with a pretty bleak beginning. Azul's kind of getting harassed by the town leader, who's kind of basically saying, "Hey, I'm just here to torment you, and if you do anything wrong, I will go and kill your father right in front of you, and then kill you." So it's a dark age because of a dragon. A dragon has shown up, destroyed basically society at this time. Like Europe, I teach history, so I am a big history fan. That's kind of bleed into the story. So 15th, 16th century Europe, very much a society built on kings and the Catholic faith,
right. and coming out of the plague too.
Exactly, coming out of the plague and coming into basically discovering a whole new world in the Americas. And we don't really see the whole discovery of the new world because everything that was there, Portugal, Spain, is destroyed by this dragon. And we see the dragon's ever lurking. It's kind of like this ominous figure that's going to, if it ever shows up, destroy society. It destroyed France. It's destroyed the Holy Roman Empire. It's destroyed the Catholic faith. It literally went, I think I mentioned it in book 1, it literally goes into Rome and burns it to the ground. It destroys so much of Europe that people basically have accepted God has forsaken them, and this world is doomed. So it's a dark age. Azul's kind of questioning her own faith. She's questioning everything around her, and she's kind of living with the goal of preserving herself and preserving her father. And that story kind of was what the ending of the prequel was going to be. It was going to be the dragon emerging, leading to destruction of Europe. Azul is born. Get to the first book. So that's how I've always viewed it. That's how I wanted it. I just decided prequel doesn't really make sense. Let me just mix it up to make it more about Spain, and not really too much of a spoiler, but between the Spanish and the Muslims of North Africa and the Middle East, who at the time were having conflict with each other. Azul is Muslim, but the way I wrote her, she doesn't seem like she's Muslim because she's questioning that faith. She's kind of consciously thinking to herself, why should I believe in God when God has allowed this to happen? Mm-hmm. So long story short, yes, a lot of the prequel is in book 1, but it's in a way that's like, if you didn't know the prequel, if you don't listen to this podcast, which if you aren't, you are a fool. You should listen to every episode, all 43 after this, and the dozens more after this. Just some self-promotion for you guys. Plug us up. No problem. If you didn't know that there was a prequel, you wouldn't be like missing out on this information, because the way it's coming from the eyes of Azul, and Azul kind of gives you this background, and as more characters come in, this information kind of spreads out more.
That is cool. So I'm excited to read this book because I've never gone into reading a book and had all this background information too. So that's very interesting. And then the religious ties are very important. I see how your own personal religious influence and beliefs are tied into there, along with like actual history. And then to have this kind of mystical element where it's more of a fantasy world, I think that's really creative. You're showing your creative abilities in this full force right there. Yeah, and that's cool. I, again, haven't read fiction in so long, and I think of like the motive of why people write books. And I was even listening to someone on my way over here, and he talked about his goal is to write what people want to pay to read. And then you just have this whole other angle at it to where like you're not really, I mean, do you have a target audience?
So theoretically, my target audience is like young adults, people who like history, people who like fantasy, people who kind of like Game of Thrones and Hunger Games. Like that's my audience. But to tell you the truth, like I didn't write this book expecting for it to be a New York Times bestseller, as much as I would love that. I didn't write this book with the expectation or the idea that, this book is going to become the next Hunger Games, and I'm just going to get rich and famous off this and not have to work another day. Like, the whole thing, I started writing this because I just really wanted to write, and the story just kept going on, and I kept getting attached. And there were times where I was like, man, this is just exhausting and just tough. But one, I didn't want to quit. I didn't want to just put all this effort in and just decide, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. But I really committed to this idea that I like this story. I've seen it out. I've seen what I want it to be, and I want to finish it off. Yeah. And it's something in my mind that I really enjoy, and I feel like if I enjoy it, someone else might enjoy it. And if I can get one or two more people to enjoy it, that's the goal. Like, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not doing it to become famous or anything like that. I really just like writing.
Well, be ready for it, because I think that mentality and that approach sometimes is what leads you into those situations, you know?
Definitely.
Because there's so much more purpose behind it.
Yeah, no.
And the people that are chasing the money, they often fall short because their heart's not into what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of the archetypes that you shared about what's in this story like resonate so much, because we see that motif in a lot of stories about wrestling with God or wrestling with your faith due to some type of destruction. You're using the archetype or the symbol of like a dragon, but that's something that happens in people's lives. And I think that that's something that a lot of people like feel.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what how'd you come up with the idea of putting that in there where they're questioning their faith? That seems like a big...
So and to hit off what you were saying too, like you're getting all this background information, like honest to God, like it's not even, what I'm saying, I would say is like not even close to any, like, you do not need any of this information to go into the book and understand this. It's kind of just like extra reading, extra stuff to go off of. But to go off of what you were saying, Russ, it's something that I've always thought works for the character. I wanted to keep it historically like accurate, not in the sense of like they speak with a certain accent or have to talk in a certain language, but in the idea of if someone drops a dragon in 16th century Europe, how are they going to react? What is the perspective of the people there? Are the people how will they grapple with this? And when it comes to Azul and her grappling with her faith, I felt like it made more sense for her to be questioning her faith and questioning everything around her than just simply having a protagonist who is just blindly or just like kind of conveniently accepting her religious beliefs and kind of just like she's the opposite of everyone else out there. Because it doesn't make sense in my mind for someone who sees her father is sick and hurt, this dude who is a complete scumbag basically harassing her every waking moment, and there's a monstrous dragon, basically the sign of the Antichrist and like the devil himself. It doesn't make sense for her to be religious and believing. Her dad, what's funny enough, her dad is like devoted to Islam. She isn't, because she can't really open her heart to that. And I think that is kind of the journey for Azul. She is going into this story not being a believer, not being truly devout, but you will see throughout the story, whether it's book 1, book 2, book 3, her faith kind of is always one of the main things surrounding her, because it's kind of something I think is necessary for her and necessary for this story. That's kind of one of the main themes of the story, this idea of faith, this idea of what is surrounding you and what you have to deal with, and the actual, I would say, the image people have of you. Like, there's a lot of things going on, but faith is one of the big things, and your relationship with others and relationship with what is around you and what has happened. And I don't want to give away too much. I feel like if I keep
don't
going,
don't do that.
I feel like if I keep going, I'm about to be like just blurring out more stuff.
Nah, because right there, I'm excited. Like, so that's it.
And if we hop out of the actual story of Azul and then talk about you and your influence and your background, what have you gone through that has bled into this? Because I feel like I hear and feel a lot of personal anecdotes that have kind of developed a lot of this story.
So I am a devout Muslim. I think you both know this.
Yeah.
Even when I was in high school, I tried to be a devout Muslim. I feel like as the years have progressed, especially in college, especially after everything that's gone on, like I've grown to be more attached to my faith in Islam than when I was a kid. I went to Jordan to help out refugees and from the Syrian and conflict in Palestine and Israel, and seeing them living with so few stuff, seeing them in these tents, seeing them in places where they can't even go to the restroom in privacy without basically carpets, like little tents, barely any privacy or anything like that. Seeing that and seeing how grateful they are for not only food, but also wanting to share that with us. Like literally anytime we brought them food, they would always be inviting us to cook us dinner. Like we're coming there to help them, and they're coming and saying, "Oh, please have dinner with us. Let us cook you something. Let us make you tea." Seeing that really got me. It opened my eyes to my faith, and being around people like-minded with me, like being around a bunch of college students who were slowly figuring out themselves in terms of being Muslims and stuff like that. Having that shared experience and kind of all of us. It kind of got me going into wanting to be more of a devout Muslim. And over time, I started reading the Quran in English because my Arabic is trash. And I could listen to it, but I'm not going to understand it. So I wanted
That's impressive in and of itself to me.
I wanted to read it. I wanted to read it, and I've read through it at least, I want to say 4 times now. And I don't read it every single, I try to read like 2 pages every single day.
Yeah.
And doing all this and kind of learning more about Islam, learning more about what I can do, and going to Friday prayers and stuff like that, learning about Islam, learning about the stories and all that, it got me really wanting to be more of a devout Muslim. And yeah, it's kind of like it bleeds into how I do, as not exactly like bleeding into teaching, as in teaching it to the kids and trying to be like subtly, converting kids or anything like that.
No.
What the people in Fox News will accuse me of doing, just because I'm a Muslim.
Not on R&B though.
Not on R&B. No.
Because to us, it's obvious that what it is that you're believing in is producing tremendous fruit out here with just the energy you have towards your work and what you're able to offer to people. So
you see the vision.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and it's been important from day one because you're someone that I've never seen you do wrong to someone, and I've always known that you were devout in your beliefs, and so it warms my heart to hear that over the years that's only become more stronger in your life, and that it's shown in your character, how you treat people, and then also the discipline that has been required of you to be a teacher and a husband and a coach and a journalist and a writer. Like, wearing all those hats is not easy to do. Wearing 2 of those hats is not easy to do. Nah. So you doing all of them and then actually coming with the end product and then continuing after the fact, and that's motivational, and it's impressive.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, and you have to thank Allah for that capability, right?
No, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Everything comes from him, and it's like I try to be grateful and fast all the time to show my appreciation, and everything I do, like I've done prayers asking for stuff, and God has blessed me with a lot of different things, and alhamdulillah, like I'm truly grateful for everything I've gotten, and so it really does like humble me how much I've been given, and seeing people who have so few stuff still be grateful. It truly like makes me want to do better as a person, as a Muslim. Like it's humbling. And I gotta say as well, like, you both are incredible humans too. I don't want to just have you guys praise me without saying anything good about you guys. Both of you from the decade and a half I've known you two, even on and off, like I've seen you guys do great things, and I know that you both are incredible people, and I'm very lucky to be able to jump on this podcast and talk with you guys and get to know you guys.
Don't make me cry on my own show. That's not the goal here.
We can cut it.
Editing is powerful.
Yeah,
exactly.
I appreciate that. I know Russ does too.
Yeah.
So we talked about how the faith is such an important role into all of this big picture, and you wear all these hats. There are writers out there who that's all they do.
Yeah.
They write full time. They got 10 hours a day they can write, and I'm sure that is also equally difficult.
Definitely.
But to put in the time and give your full attention to all these other things is a whole different ballgame. And so you've been able to do that. You talk about how it's kind of always on your mind that you do want to write. I think that especially once you get to like your 3rd book, you're gonna have more success in this than you are probably anticipating for yourself.
Sure.
Knock on wood, yeah.
Would you consider being a full-time writer if the opportunity presented itself?
I would love to do that. That said, I genuinely love teaching.
Yeah.
I love working with the kids. I love seeing the kids. I love doing anything with them. Like I'm the type of teacher where instead of having lunch and just, looking over papers and grading and stuff like that and getting myself ready and prepped, I usually have that stuff already kind of set up that I can do it at a later time and burn through it. I love going to the lunches, whether it's my 6th graders or my old students like 7th, 8th, or 9th grade, and just talking with them and seeing how they're doing and messing with them. What's actually funny is like last week, one of my kids invited me to their ballet recital, and another teacher didn't get the invite, even though she is beloved by that kid. I don't know what the issue was. I don't want to make it sound like I was just the only teacher because she invited others. Excuse me. She invited others.
Yeah.
I think it was just like she only had a couple invites and wanted to invite her teachers that she's known the longest. So what actually happened was during my prep hour, I went over to her room. We kind of planned this out. So it wasn't like I was interrupting her class. We kind of knew we were going to do this. I went into her room and I talked to that kid, and I was just like, oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I truly appreciate it. I can tell from this card, you truly appreciate me. Oh, hi, Spanish teacher or teacher that will be redacted to save her, I don't even know, like.
Anonymity,
yeah. Oh, hi, I didn't mean to interrupt your class, and we were just joking about how could you invite me and not her? And like, messing around with her, and she was just like, no, please stop, please, no. She was like freaking out, like not actually not
You
actually
playing jokes on them.
And they know that's the type of humor I do. Like, this is a student that I had 2 years ago, and she was 100% A+ student. And whenever I give her grade slip, I would be like, a bunch of ones and zeros. What are we doing here? I thought you were supposed to be a good student, and you get ones and zeros. I'm gonna have to talk to your parents. So she knows I like messing with her, and she's fine with it. But she was also just like, as I was showing it to her, she was like, no, no.
Yeah.
So she was already gonna go anyway, but we just kind of like to mess around. But I love working with the kids. I love teaching, and I don't know. I would love it. The book blows up to the point that I could become a full-time writer, but I don't think I could ever see myself truly get away from teaching and truly get away from working with these kids, because it's so much fun and I love it.
Well, you put in just as much time with your teaching career, and developing these relationships important, and it's very gratifying to have that influence on these kids, right?
Definitely.
And be able to show them support and love, and being able to have those moments with them where you can be a little more lighthearted and joking, but also let them know that education is important and that they have this support. And it's important to have someone in the educational space where these kids do feel comfortable inviting them to an event or engaging in that way. And I think that, nowadays people are kind of scared to have some of those type of relationships with the students, and then they don't feel that connection that I feel that we had the opportunity to have a lot when we were growing up, just because the way that things are going. And people tell a lot of stories.
Definitely.
Storytelling is a gift. You are a storyteller, but some people use that gift for bad, and it's just affected the way that we have to interact with each other. So,
and history in itself is storytelling. I'm wondering, what is some or one of your favorite subjects or time periods to teach about in history class?
So what's actually funny is, like, I teach history from the beginning of human history all the way to the 15th, 16th century. So, like, I go from the first humans walking on the earth and the out of Africa theory, the idea that humans migrate and come from Africa, to basically wait, what was that?
I said Pangea.
Pangea, yeah. From that to... I was just like... I thought you were saying, like, Niger. I was like...
For a quick second, because I wonder now that you said this, like, I'm wondering if Pangea was how the world was when the out of Africa theory is.
So, I think... Pangea is like the supercontinent that was like millions and millions of years ago.
Okay,
it's believed that human life begins... There's all these types of different humans that emerge. I can't remember if it was like humans emerged like 5 million.
Prehistoric phase.
Yeah.
It is the prehistoric phase.
Before all this.
I think early humans emerged like 5 million years ago or something like that.
Okay.
And the Pangea is like 100 million years ago.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying like Niger, and I was about to be like, I'm pretty sure it's from like West Africa, not East Africa.
Yeah.
But
do you know Graham Hancock? Have you ever heard of the author Graham Hancock?
I have not.
Oh, okay. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, like, I go from there to the age of exploration. So like, I'm covering a lot of stuff, and I find it all interesting, and I'm getting the kids involved. Like, when we get to China and we talk about the mandate of heaven, which is divine justification rule, I'm always like, I have like a actual crown, like a fake crown in my room, and I just will put it on when I start talking about it, and I will say, like, one of you can claim to have the mandate. One of you can say that everyone here hates me and loves you, so you should rule. And then I'll have the kids raise their hand. Do you think Blake should have the mandate? And all of them will raise their hand. And I'll just take the crown off, toss it to him, and just go to the back and have him stand up in the front. And I'll be like, well, now Blake's now running the class. He's the one in charge. Are you guys going to respect him? Somebody's going to raise up their hand and be like, oh, no, I have the mandate. And bleed into all that. It's fun doing that. But my personal favorite moments in history are like the Industrial Revolution, like from Napoleon to World War II. I find that such an interesting time because history is going so fast with change. And even though like it goes into these kind of crazy wars and like events, it's like such an interesting moment to see like how this stuff goes on and like how all these little dominoes bleed into the next event and the next event and the next event. And it's just like such an interesting and wild time to read and learn.
Do you think that the human experience as far as history is you talked about how fast history goes on. Is it like an exponential thing? Do you think there's more events happening, or is it just our perception of our experience?
No, I definitely think more events are happening like in the last 100 years, just because of the world has gotten a lot smaller with globalization and population stuff. And I think time has just changed because everything at that time, in the time that I teach, things are going slow because people just have to move. They can't move at the pace we can move. I can get on a flight today, get to Ankara in about 20 hours. I can get to Turkey in 20 hours, give or take like the stoppage of flights and everything. Getting halfway across the world is an insane journey. Like Christopher Columbus, I think he took like 9 months to get to from Portugal to, what was it, the Caribbeans?
Yeah.
And
technology and innovation
has changed the game so much that I think so much events are happening now because basically we have so much and we have so many things that shorten the gap. Like if Rome had the technology to conquer the Mediterranean in a year, they probably would have been able to, just because they were that dominant. But given the fact that they had the same weapons as everyone else and they had the same stuff going on, they had to basically, they were on a longer leash. They didn't have to go as quickly as like other countries, I guess, because like they didn't have like that time. Or I don't really know where I was going with the Rome thing, other than like they basically did not have to.
Rome's important in all
Rome
of this.
is important.
Very important in the whole thing. And I can only imagine like Rome with our current technology and military power, with the aircraft carriers and all that. Like that's wild to think
those
about.
Barbarians up in Germany and the East would not have liked Rome if they had that stuff.
Yeah, and then so it's interesting you bring up technology and innovation as far as like physical travel and maybe physical accomplishments, where we can be, who we can speak to. I think a lot about, how education has changed. And I think sometimes we underestimate how different our educational experience is, having all these resources and access to the internet and even still the library. But along with AI being able to summarize things and just have that direct reach to almost any bit of information that we want, whether it's true or not. But that ability to educate ourselves, I don't know what percentage of the world is actually utilizing those tools in that way and adapting. But I think that artificial intelligence is going to kind of propel our abilities in that manner too.
Definitely.
Have you thought about how these type of technological advancements are going to change your experience as a teacher?
It's definitely going to change it, especially after, like, I started teaching in COVID. Like, I started 2020, so I got thrown into the fire when it was just online and then hybrid. So I've seen how technology, I've seen it change. I student taught at Corona the year before COVID, and I was student teaching at Mesquite. Basically I was at Mesquite for the fall of 2019, and I was at Corona for the winter of 2020. So I saw what high school usually looks like without COVID basically running it out of the park. So I saw like how we were still kind of, Corona felt like it was basically the same thing. Like, do you guys remember Miss Mandelbaum, Corey Mandelbaum? She was the econ teacher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not remember her when I started student teaching with her, and I kind of
remember
felt like
the name. I wouldn't recognize.
Yeah,
it.
me neither.
I did not remember the name or the face. So that was a fun, first reintroduction.
Yeah.
I felt like a complete jerk right there, but it felt like it was the same class, same environment, same thing that I was in when I was in high schools, like how it was for us, and then granted, different school, going to basis and teaching there, teaching sixth graders, doing it online, having they were all given tablets, they were all given iPads to kind of keep track with us in terms of everything was online, the materials was online, our notes were online. So I've seen technology in the classroom change dramatically. Like even today, I can still get my kids iPads in the classroom and tablets to work on yearbook stuff and work on material for my class, and I give them the notes. I can print out notes. I can have them print out the notes ahead of time and do guided notes. In terms of AI, honestly, the sky's the limit for it. I just don't know what that's going to look like in an educational side, because that really is up to people above my pay grade to make that decision. Because it could definitely get me out of the classroom, I imagine. Like if they,
I was wondering what you thought about that. Yeah.
If it's not something I really worry about, because like I don't mean to sound braggadocious, but the Mr. Soussi experience is quite difficult to,
you know. I was
gonna say
it's quite difficult to replicate this.
Take
I don't
me
know.
on, robot.
And it's very necessary. Like your
It's
communication
so
skills,
necessary.
the nonverbals, the things that you're interacting with these kids.
Not only that, just going from online to in person, it's two different animals. There are kids who will still come to me to this day who are in ninth grade who will tell me, Mr. Soussi, I wasn't paying attention in your class. I was playing video games while you were talking. Like being online, like, yeah, you can have a classroom online. You can have a computer teaching. But if you don't have the human experience teaching, if you don't have that teacher or that presence, the adult presence, being on the kids are very much more likely to just not care because you're putting it on them to do the stuff. And if you're not making sure, if you're not putting it, if you're not expecting them to give you it back, and they're not expected to kind of, it's weird because like if they're expected to get it back to you and there's no one watching over them and they're kind of just left to their own devices, I feel like 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, they don't have the self-discipline to kind of go, the accountability. They don't have that in them to keep on track, A, to pay attention when they don't want to, and B, to not just simply use the notes in front of them because they know I can't catch them.
For sure.
I can't forget how one kid literally had their parents helping them on a test while the teacher was watching them on the camera. Like that's literally, I know my school is a bit different from other schools, so I know there's other horror stories about online, but like hearing that, seeing how parents there was a kid who literally did not show up the entire year except for one day. He went physically to the school to take the Arizona state mandated testing. That's the only time I've seen him, heard him. He was physically in a classroom the entire 2021 year. So it's like AI could definitely be a threat to teaching, but I definitely feel like after COVID and seeing how it is online and these schools and these districts seeing it, I feel like it would only be used to kind of like support classes. Like, definitely something that teachers need to look out for in terms of kids cheating. Like, I don't have my kids type up anything because I know if they're typing it up, they can easily just go into ChatGPT and say, type up this essay with this prompt. But I think AI, I don't know enough about it to say like how I would use it. I've kind of been just using the same thing for my class for years, but it's something that could definitely help. It's something that I could support. Could it take my job? Potentially.
So, let me rewind though. You require handwritten essays?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't really write that much. I don't have the kids turn in too much homework.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, if I was asking for them to write stuff, and if I was asking for them to give me like, I've had them do a journalist activity where they reported on a historical event and they get a quote from me as whoever they want me to be, whether it's Genghis Khan, whether it's Julius Caesar, the Senate of Rome, doesn't matter. I've had them write out that story and then hand it to me and I'll grade it.
Yeah.
I don't want them to type it because I know, based on what I've seen, they could easily just copy paste.
That would be easy for ChatGPT to take.
Easy.
The only reason I asked though is because, like you said, some of these decisions are going to be way above your pay grade. I think that the whole picture of the system, the educational system, is just going to look completely different in 20 years, and they'll have to find a way to integrate these technologies, because if we're not doing that here, other countries will, and we have to stay up to par as to how we deliver that information. And
Definitely.
We're just going to have all of these other tools that we really don't have any idea about right now. So I think you're right. In the short term, it's not going to be too crazy, but I do think that one day we're just going to plug in and upload information to ourselves. It's going to be like that, right?
I can definitely see that. But one thing I always hit on as a teacher, and I think is very important, I don't try and teach my kids to memorize. I try and hammer to them like, hey, I want you to understand this. I want you to get this. I don't want you to just simply tell me what you memorize, because I think memorization, especially with history, is kind of just... it defeats kind of the purpose. It's arbitrary. Yeah. I don't really tell them dates. I don't really expect them to know dates, because I can literally, if I want to right now, just take out my phone. I could Google.
And if you know the timeline,
exactly,
the order of events is not too relevant, right?
I would say the order matters, but like
No, I'm saying if you know the order, then the actual date number is not that relevant.
Exactly. Like I can look up when did Rome fall, and I'm going to get different answers, but the one that usually is like 476. But
there's not like a specific answer
well,
you get on stuff
it depends.
Like
it depends on which Rome we're talking about. The Western Rome falls in 476 CE. The East, which was considered Rome at the time, falls in 1492. So regardless, that's like something I don't care if the kids know. I want them to understand why Rome falls. What does that do to the world, and what does that do to like? Why do we care about that today?
It's funny you bring this up because I've been seeing on. Oh, look at me saying this. I've been seeing on TikTok. Oh no, I'm that person now. I've been seeing on TikTok this joke going around where women are like, I want to see if my boyfriend has thought about the Roman Empire in the past however many days. And I was like, what is this? But they almost all say yes. And so you're talking about the Roman Empire, and I'm like, oh shoot, here we are.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that. No, I don't go. I will go on a TikTok binge like once every other week just to see like a bunch of videos. But honestly, the most I spend on social media is like Twitter, or sorry, X. My apologies. I'll go on Twitter occasionally, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And I haven't seen has my boyfriend thought of Rome, but I've seen like a bunch of stuff about like Rome on Twitter and like.
Oh really?
Yeah, like just a bunch of random.
So it's
things.
just a common, I guess, buzz.
So why do you think that is though? That so many of the dudes are like, yeah, I do be thinking of Rome.
I don't know if they. I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. It's weird to me.
I don't know
because I didn't think it was legit until I saw the response.
I think that like as people and men, we have this like yearning to understand our origins, right? So
Definitely.
I feel like for Rome, for a lot of the Westerners, like Rome is their Egypt that he was talking about, the out of Africa. Rome is like the out of Rome for them.
Okay.
So maybe they like are trying to understand, do the knowledge of self like more.
Okay.
And that's just where they found the origin.
I thought maybe as men we want to know the concepts of being conquerors and how to like more of like a leadership like.
Hey, but he was talking about Genghis Khan. Like we could go way. I mean, there's
well,
greater.
Right. And you think back of all those big names, like how can I be Julius Caesar or something like
But
that?
there's like there's greater conquerors outside of the Roman Empire. So
of course, yeah. And so you're saying like more Western society.
Because I think Rome is where we find the
idea.
beginning of like America, right? I mean, it's kind of
Rome and Greece are kind of basically like the pillars of the American government and stuff like that. Like a lot of what we do in the United States and like how our governments function is kind of looking back at those ancient civilizations and thinking like, okay, what did they do? How did they fall apart? How can we improve? And not to mention the fact that we come from the British Empire, and the British at the time had a bit of a democratic system. Obviously, they had the mascot that was the king at the time, who still had power. But I think a lot of it with Rome is a bit of what both of you guys were saying. Yeah, Rome is kind of like seen as the peak of the ancient era, like this grandiose civilization that conquered all of the Mediterranean, something that no one has done since. And then there's a bit of the whole understanding our origins, understanding this marvelous civilization that honestly I don't give the kids enough time with Rome because it's like such a massive thing, and I know they have a class and they got a club where they can learn more about it. So I'm like, listen, I need to teach you guys a bunch of other stuff. Rome, we're not going to really
like a
dive
history
in deeply.
club or
history club. We teach Latin at our school, so like
okay.
the Latin teacher is amazing, Miss Receiver. She is phenomenal, and she does a great job teaching them about Rome and teaching them Latin. So I already know they're getting their dosage of Rome.
That's cool.
I don't need to kind of go diving into it too much.
What's your perspective on the out of Africa in relation to Rome and the British empires, though?
Well, what do you mean by that?
Like, did the Roman and British empires get a lot of what they did in their structure from African origins, or are those two separate thoughts?
I think those are two separate thoughts. I think the British and the if we're talking about like how if the British Empire kind of built its empire off of like the African continent and using forced labor and stuff like that, I would say, yeah, the British and a lot of the West kind of builds themselves up through forced labor, through slavery, whether it's from the natives in the Americas when the Spanish and the Portuguese come, or it's from Africans who were taken from Africa to the Americas, to these colonial empires to basically be forced labor. I think the British and the Romans government and how their society's built up in terms of what they have with their government, their leadership, their system is a bit different. Out of Africa is just talking about how humans migrate, how they go from Central West Africa, Central East Africa, all the way to basically the Americas. So I think it's two separate things, but if your question is asking, do they get their society and stuff from Africa? I would say no, but they definitely benefited from them. Like the Romans were one of the biggest slave countries ever, and the British, I mean, I don't think I need to mention more than the British than just British.
Yeah, and what you're saying is interesting because I think you're trying to talk about like the cultural influence maybe on how this goes.
A little bit.
So this makes me wonder with you, because you were talking about how in Azul, you were talking about how the Northern Africans who were Muslim and the Spanish people who were Catholic, like would those people be considered the Moors in history?
Yeah.
So that those Northern Africans, so they had a lot to do with the Renaissance of the European culture, correct?
Definitely.
Like, do you know how big their influence was as far as those like North African Muslims on the Renaissance?
So what's funny is my dad always talks to me about this. It's kind of accepted and known, like the Middle East, specifically the Islamic Empire, and like the Muslims who kind of controlled these massive cities in the East that didn't fall apart when the Roman Empire fell apart. They preserved documents and stories and literature and the history of the Romans and the civilizations before. And when basically the Crusades happened and the Western nations of Europe started fighting with the Muslims, this information starts to get back into trade with the Muslims and the Christians. So it's definitely, the Muslims were important for the Renaissance. Like if the Muslims did not preserve those informations, if the Muslims and the Islamic Empire didn't preserve those documents and stuff like that, the Europeans definitely would not have the information that they would about the Romans and the Greeks, and there wouldn't be this kind of idea of rebirth, of going back to our golden era of this time period where we were the dominant group. It would be definitely a different situation that transpires in Europe.
Yeah, I think that's really important to know in the course of history, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's all about perspective, because of course that's not exactly how they taught it to us in school, just because it was written from someone else's point of view, right?
Definitely. It's I don't really like the phrase "history is written by the victors," because I know like the idea behind it. Like the people who win always will paint themselves in a better light than those who they've lost to. But history isn't just from one source or one perspective. There's hundreds of different perspectives, hundreds of different sources, and historians are going through it and trying to make sure everything that is out there is as accurate as it can be. And I think it's more along the lines of it falls down to the teacher's curriculum and the material. Like if I know in Texas, Texas and Florida in particular, those are the two states I know, their books, their history books are kind of just like, they leave out details. You can fill it in if you know, but if you don't, you're kind of just like, oh yeah, Africans were here as immigrants. They were here to work and get the American dream. Well, no, they were here as slaves. That's not the full story, but like, is a 5-year-old going to know that? And is a 5-year-old going to raise their hand and be like, Mr. Davis, this is wrong. And when the teacher says, oh no, that's right. Yeah. It really depends on the teacher. It really depends on how they want to go about it and how they want to teach it, and like how in detail they want. Because I don't recall, even when we were in high school learning about the Renaissance, like I don't remember it going in that much detail.
It was small. It was brief. Yeah. That's why I was interested when you're talking about all the things that you teach, and I was like, man, that's in one class? Yeah. Because again, I remind myself I can't be too upset with how I learned what I learned, because it is so much. And it's like, so you do have to pick and choose what information you give. Now, could I be upset about what was prioritized? Yeah, maybe. But when it comes down to it, it is kind of our job to fill in those blanks if we really care about the information that we're being given. And you do have to kind of learn some discernment even as a teenager, just going through your high school experience, and even more so now with all of these other resources and sources of information. Sources, yeah. X, Twitter, is considered a source by a lot of people, and anybody can put anything on there.
I could tweet right now that Kevin Durant just sped through Scottsdale and will miss tonight's game, and someone might believe that.
Yeah, you're going to get a couple retweets.
Exactly. Yeah. Someone's going to be like, wow, KD can't even be selfless for a team that he's Super Bowl.
It's
shaking
really
my
easy.
Head.
Really easy to spread a message. That's a very good example, because stuff like that happens, and all types of allegations and things, that it's just so easy for all of us to be journalists at this point, right?
Yeah.
Because
anyone can just go out there and put on a hat and buy a verification,
right?
And then there's just like, I could change my bio to be like reporter for some random company, and just be like, anonymous sources say this, and just spread.
So kind of backpedaling into what the comment you made about historians putting in their effort to make sure that what's being spread on the mass level is accurate. Do you know what goes into that process at all?
So I don't know all the details. I do know like historians have to kind of like venture out to make sure what primary sources they have are actually primary sources. I think it's very much like you have to go and review where you get the sourcing from, who you got it from, what book, and the books usually have those references. So like, I remember when I was in college getting my teaching certificate, I wrote a 20-page essay on not Alexander the Great, the last Roman emperor. I can't remember his name right now. I think it was like Nicholas II, and I got this big history book on Nicholas II and like articles he wrote to his wife, and like letters that were written back and forth, and I cited that. And even in that book, it was like 20, 30 years old, but there's like, you can see what they used to reference, and like there's a lot of details. I don't know all of it, but there's a lot that goes on with citing and making sure the material that's out there is accurate and not just I made it up.
Yeah.
Allegedly made it up.
You know, author, teacher, you're talking about inspiration, background, some of your religious perspective and how it plays a role into all of this. And you're a storyteller now. And you started as a writer, right?
Yeah.
And do you feel that your journalism background helped you in your endeavors to become an author?
Being a journalist has helped me in like not only being an author, but just in teaching and everything I kind of do. Like I always kind of have the mind of a journalist at times, and when I'm writing the book, I'm always kind of like thinking to myself of how I would like to read it, because I'm always how I would think the audience would like to read it, just because that was always kind of a perspective I had as a reporter. Like, is this good stuff? Is this like interesting? Is this something that makes sense? And like double checking and triple checking. And when I was a kid, I could not write. I was a terrible writer, and going through that close to 10 years of just working as a reporter and like working on my writing, I feel like it's improved my skills dramatically. So with the book, it definitely helped. As a teacher, it's kind of like figuring out how to teach them and kind of like present material in a way and kind of go about it in a way. And also just have fun in class too. Like it's definitely like activities and stuff that I've thought of I take from my journalistic background. I know I mentioned how I do a journalism activity, and I did yearbook. I am currently one half of the yearbook team at Basis. I had a journalism club. I've done multimedia, and all these different stuff I've done comes from being a journalist and being a coach too. Like I've seen coaches work and seeing learning from sports kind of helps me be able to make that happen.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So you're a coach now, you've been coached, and you told me that in your writing experience, you know, you're self-published and you had to have a little bit of mentorship and guidance from someone to figure out how to do all of that, right?
Yep. You guys remember Cool Hand Pat, his wife's mom, Christy Cohen, shout out to you. She helped me out tremendously with this book. I literally sent her a rough draft of it. I've asked her a bunch of questions about getting published, getting it out there. Who do you know do you have any agents? Is it possible to do it self-published? Like, she helped me out tremendously. And even to this day, I will still talk to her. I've sent her like a rough draft of the second book and like the ideas, and she loves it. So like when I know she likes it, it's on the right track, because she doesn't even do fantasy. She does like a whole bunch of different books. So it's like, she likes it, but it's just like not her typical wheel, not her typical place of venture. So it's great having that mentor, having that person out there that can look over it and knows what I'm going through and can give me like advice and like help me out. Like if someone isn't a good person for this, she can kind of help me out and be like, oh yeah, I've worked with this person. You may not want to work with them.
Yeah. Have you always been good at taking criticism?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I try. So. I like to think I am capable of taking constructive criticism. I've told anyone that's gotten the book, like, yeah, let me know what you think, even if it's just like, yeah, Soussi, don't quit the day job. Some of the kids, like, you kind of have to have thick skin to not only just do this, but also just be a teacher. I've had parents email me being like, do your job, Mr. Soussi. This is the only class my student's struggling in. This is on you. Don't email me unless it's a behavior issue at 8 p.m. right after work. And I'm just like, I'm not going to deal with this right now. I'm going to deal with this tomorrow.
Good for you. Good for you for having boundaries.
Yeah, that's important.
8 p.m. Like I'm willing to respond at 6. Like, but at 8 you're going to be like, yeah, Soussi, you're the reason.
I got a book to write.
I'm not going to deal with this right now. I'm off the clock. But I've had kids tell me, and they're kids that I think are joking, but are also like, I'm not. I will take at face value, be like, yeah, the book sucks, Mr. Soussi. It's too boring. I'm like, okay. Glad to hear that.
That's crazy. They trying to hurt your feelings out here.
Russ, they're going to try and hurt your feelings no matter what you do. They're out here for blood. They were telling me like 2 weeks ago, like, yeah, Mr. Soussi, your barber messed you up. Yeah. That hairline's not looking good. Like kids were telling me I have a McDonald's hairline.
See, that's when I've learned to start my hurt people segment of the class. I'm going to be like, hey, let me tell you why you want me to feel pain.
Now, I feel like that it is important for me to be 100% forthwith. I am making fun of the kids too.
Oh, no.
I am engaging with the slander. I am. As I said,
incriminate yourself. Little Stacy's mom gonna listen to this. You're gonna get an email at 9:30 p.m. next time.
Roast battles.
I'm just the furthest I'm willing to go is just like, I'm not actually hurting their feelings. I'm not like I'll be saying like a kid's got maybe 2 brain cells when it's clear I'm messing around. They've taken it back and joked with me. So like, I know they're messing and they know I'm messing. Like I've told them and I've told the class, like, listen, I will make jokes, but if you do not like it, please let me know and I will stop immediately.
Boundaries and communication.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful things.
Beautiful things. Yeah. So it's I'm lighting the gas fire and burning myself sometimes, but it's like, it's a good, healthy situation because they love it. I love it. And if it ever gets too bad, or if it gets to a point where a kid's not feeling it, I'm always like able to shut them down and be like, all right, we're done with this. We're not making this joke anymore. We're moving on. Yeah.
Not to be taken out of context. Burning yourself is not good.
Right. Let me ask you this.
Allegedly.
Let me ask you this, Soussi, because, we're talking about how you coach now, you coach basketball, and I ref basketball, take it very serious, and I'm like still learning certain rules about this game. So I'm wondering for you, like, how has it been learning the rules of basketball and there's probably a lot of stuff that you're like, what the heck is?
It is exhausting trying to get all this information for basketball. Yeah. It is tough, and shout out to the other coach, Yesenia Tolzman. She's great, and I've kind of, like, me and her, we've been working as a coach duo for this is now our 3rd year. So we've learned a lot. She's helped me out with a bunch of stuff. I've helped her out with a bunch of stuff. So having a great teammate to work with is great, and it really helps make it easy. That said, it is exhausting trying to get all this information, and you got to know it by heart. You got to tell me when I'm wrong. So it's like,
Front and back.
Front and back. You
Upside
can't.
down.
It's okay
so
when
many.
it's okay when I don't understand
Yeah.
it. You, on the other hand,
He said, I don't need to know the rules.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not the one getting paid to know the rules.
Yeah.
That's you.
Yeah, that's true though.
But
That's true.
it's tough, and
Yeah.
I try and just use what I know from sports and like from what I've understand from basketball, whether it's NBA, NCAA, or just high school, and kind of like use that to help me understand it. And just like when I go to the coaches meeting, they go through all the new stuff, so I try and understand that new material.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then of course you got the really hard job of getting people to buy into a role that they might have to play when they want to do something else.
The fun stuff.
Yeah, right. So how does that go? Because I'm sure you have a couple of kids where it's like, okay, you guys take on the scoring role, but someone needs to rebound, someone needs to set screens, someone needs to. Do your kids buy into those?
They buy in. It's tough because like. Russ, let me ask you this, and I think this is a good way to kind of show you how many when you were at Corona and you were on the varsity team and all that, how many practices did y'all have each week?
5 at least, if
Five
not 6. Yeah.
At least we get 2 at least.
Oh,
yeah.
We
That's
get an
interesting.
hour. We get an hour practice, and our gym is not Corona size.
Right.
There's so many times with our gym, and again, I love my school. I love teaching there. I do not want to make it sound like I'm slandering. It is not. The school was not. The building was not designed to be a school when it was first built. The gym has kind of like open things up on the top. Like it does not have, we can look up at the ceiling up here and we can see like it has tiles and like lamp shadings and all that.
Yeah,
It does not have that in this gym. So like kids at times when they're taking shots, if they shoot high enough, it will hit like a pole up there.
Oh wow.
We haven't had anything break, thank God, but they hit that so occasionally, and it's just like having the lack of practices, it is tough to get everyone
The resources.
get the resources. So it's like we're doing our best. The kids are doing their best. There are times where there can be some frustration. The kids, thankfully, for the last 2 years have been very much willing to buy in. We're still going over a lot of the basics though, and it's kind of just tough to kind of keep them, to get them everything they need to succeed, because it's like we can only do so much.
Sure.
And there's some times where kids think they are the hottest of hot stuff, and they are, a good way to put it is selfish, and can lead to temper tantrums being thrown at a game that leads to conflict with other players. But for the most part, that's only happened once, so that's good to have.
Yeah.
It's always a good situation, but
Yeah, it sounds like they got you in the right place, because it
For
takes
sure.
somebody with patience and understanding, and again, like we said, the communication skills, and not having the resources can be really frustrating for everybody. Right?
Definitely.
And then parents don't always see what goes on behind the scenes, and
There's
the
been some-
preparation and all the other things that you have to juggle on top of that. Right?
there's been some angry emails sent our way for stuff that does not get, the communication doesn't always link. So there's been some angry emails sent our way, and it's always funny getting those emails, and it's just like, you didn't want to just say this to us? You didn't want to, we
Right.
see you all the
I
time.
saw you 30 minutes ago. Why you just send me this?
Why can we just talk then? Why?
Yeah.
That's
It's
Again, communication. How you communicate, when you communicate, is very important. We've talked about that many times on here. You know it as a journalist, as an author, as a teacher. We know it in our professions, and then as podcast professionals, right? And everybody just needs to keep that in the back of their mind, that their words are important, how they deliver them are important, who they deliver them to, and again, the time. Because
Exactly.
Mr. Soussi got other things to do, y'all.
Yeah,
Don't
man.
be emailing him at 8 p.m. We want another Azul.
They have been, the kids have been desperate for it. They have been begging to see any version of it. I showed it to two. I was scrolling through the screen when I showed it to them, and they freaked out sometimes.
That's
so
awesome.
They are
I got that sneak peek.
exactly.
They were taking pictures.
They get like, it just scrambled through, and they're just like see one word, and they're like telling other kids, and they're all freaking out about it. So like,
you're going to get that leak.
Oh man. If
it's
one of the kids leaked
it's,
it.
oh my god. If
You better have a good password on there.
they're 11-year-olds, I can gaslight them into believing it's false.
Hey, these 11-year-olds, they be on Roblox and stuff. They know how to
man.
code. You
They're
better watch
engineers,
out.
bro.
Little engineers. That's our youth, the
That's our
future, and you got some of their developments in your hands. So we appreciate.
Unfortunately,
that. No, we appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man.
And we're gonna wrap this thing up though. And again, let everybody know where they can get this book.
So Azul, I'm just gonna look at the camera, not look at you guys. I apologize.
Don't look at me.
Azul is on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's on a lot of different websites. Amazon's probably the best site to buy it because I know they bought like 60 copies in July. They bought like a bunch after it got shipped out and stuff like that. It looks like this. If you just type in Azul and Omar Soussi in Amazon, you will find it. If you type in Azul Omar Soussi on Google, you'll find it as well. It's $15, $15.99 for the paperback, $20.99 for the hardcover, and there is a digital copy, $10.99 on Amazon, and I think also on Barnes and Noble's Kindle site. If you live in Arizona, if you go, I do a bunch of book signing events. I do a bunch of stuff like that. Yeah. So if you do get the book and you want me to sign it, I am more than happy to sign it. I love signing the book and hearing from you guys, and I would greatly appreciate any reviews, whether it's positive or negative. Again, I do not mind hearing in the comment section of Amazon, yeah, Soussi, stick to your day job. What's actually funny is there was some random guy who left like a weird comment in there, and I've been trying to get it off for months.
Oh, no.
I don't...
Hey, welcome to fame, Soussi. You're going to have to deal with that more.
It's wild. It's not even haters. He rated it 5 out of 5, but the thing in there is just a complete lie. And it's just...
That's interesting.
I'll show it to you guys off the podcast. I'll let you see. We'll take a peek at it. But I appreciate any review. I appreciate anything, whether it's Goodreads, on Barnes & Noble site, on Amazon. Any support is appreciated. And thank you guys for...
When's your next book signing?
The next book signing, so I don't have anything for this year. Next January, God willing, I should be doing something with Changing Hand Bookstore. I haven't heard from them since we agreed on a date. But January 26th, I think it's 26. Yeah, 26. It's the Friday. It is the last Friday of the month. I think it's the 26th. I am doing a author talk and selling and signing the book there.
Great.
So that's the next time I will do anything with the book. As of now, I try and go to Barnes and Nobles all the time for book signings. I try and get my name out there. So it really just depends on when the emails get accepted and read and responded to.
All right. Well, that sounds good, man. Yeah. Everybody go get you a copy of Azul by Mr. Omar Soussi. Omar, thank you so much for joining us. Man. We got to give our quick shout outs, R&B Podcast produced by Rhythm and Balance. You know what it is. Rhythm and Balance is doing a great job. Doing a great job. Keep it up, y'all.
Best podcast in the game.
Hey, he said it, not me.
Man,
what's our email?
There it is. rnbpod
at gmail.com.
Yes.
Let us know what you think. Let us know if you want to get a signed book from Omar. We can link y'all up. I got me a signed copy. And if you're interested in being on the show or having production done for you, whether it's the audio, visual concepts, just let us know. Rhythm and Balance is here at your service. And shout out to our sponsor, Elevate Personal Training, LLC, Premium. Fitness and nutrition coaching, Southwest. You already know.
Yeah, man, I'm just going to say thank you, Omar Soussi. This is blessings. This podcast has been blessings. It feels great to talk to you, man.
Thank you, Blake. Thank you, Russ. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate y'all. And you guys need to follow them. You need to get on their social media, get on their podcast. They're amazing. Make sure you do that. And
tell the kids, man, we keep it PG around here,
They're gonna pop in. I'll tell you right now, they're gonna listen to this podcast.
Hey,
I guarantee you that.
Listening. Shout out to Mr. Soussi. You know, it's been a cool
respect
dude for
him. Don't talk about his hairline, none of that.
You're just gaslighting them into talking about it. They're gonna hear this part and be like, "Yeah, Mr. Soussi, I heard about your hairline on the podcast. What are you talking about there?"
But at least they got good attention spans. Tell them if you listened all the way through that episode, you need to listen through my whole class, right?
There you go.
You would think that they only want to listen when they want to listen.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like that too. All right, y'all. On that note, like last week, we'll see you next week.
Peace.